Hello everybody, this is Antinatalist, and today something hit a real sore spot, and this is, well, interesting. He's been driving around a couple of times, but that is a Mazda RX-7, or at least I'm pretty sure it is, completely sure it is. Anyway, it looks like the vehicle that my dad bought in about 1978 or 1979 when I was graduating high school. And my dad had just had a newborn son with his new wife. And I was graduating high school, planning to go off to college, and my dad gets it in his mind to purchase this brand new Mazda RX-7 sports car. When I saw that go, and it was exactly the same color as the one I just saw riding around, so even if that wasn't a Mazda, it looked exactly like that, color and everything. So that really hit a sore spot. I haven't seen that car, since the early 80s. But, yeah, I have a Facebook group. It's called My Shitty Parents. And, this is just a perfect write-up for that page. And, when you live long enough, you have like episodes that remind you of bad things and memories of bad things. And this is just a perfect example of how salt gets in the wounds from the past. And I was just utterly shocked and confused that my dad would have bought that sports car when I was planning to go off to college. And, I needed a college education. And I thought his expenditure was just extremely frivolous and foolish. And it was just so selfish. And my parents, they took the cake on narcissism and self-servingness. And I have so many stories, to tell. But when this Mazda drove around today in the color of the car of that my dad owned, it just really stung. And I have a friend, and she literally gives her last dime to her children and her grandchildren. And they literally step all over her and cross every boundary that she has, and they are not good to her. They're not appreciative. And she gives them money in the thousands, like $10,000, because one of her children, their husband was not working during the shutdown, the COVID shutdown, lockdown. So she wanted to assist. And she gets no appreciation. She gets no visits from her children or her grandchildren. She actually has to beg for them to come over and visit. And she actually has to lure them with money. And she says that she feels like she is buying their love. I'm sure a lot of families feel that way, a lot of parents. But in my situation, it was just nothing but neglect and nothing but just selfish, utter, pathetic narcissism on their part. I really think that my parents were happy that me and Scott were getting of age and growing up and could, leave the nest. And I will say that we were good kids. We were obedient. We were never in trouble with school or the law or, nothing. Not fights at school, not skipping school, nothing at all. We were really good kids. We were obedient. We were cooperative. I will say an emphasis on obedient. And I really regret being so obedient, because it didn't get me anywhere. And I think my parents, they had a couple of really good children that they did not even deserve. And man, oh man, did that image of that Mazda RX-7, probably 1979 year, really, really rub the salt into the wounds today. It's not going to distort my day, though, but I did have to make a video of it, because I did not expect to see that kind of car. And I guess it was worth seeing it, because it did make a great video. And all during my childhood, I especially preteen on up, I just saw so much selfishness at home. And like my mom, she would spend more time getting her hair done on Saturday than taking me skating. And she never watched me skate. You know, I see these parents, and they're so involved, they're so invested in their children. Like, they'll literally sit in the bleachers and watch like a boring soccer game or baseball game. And I see parents like so devoted to their children, and I didn't experience anything like that. And, you know, I mean, me and my brother, we didn't have extracurricular activities, and we were actually more well off than a lot of people, a lot of parents that did invest into their children's futures. And, you know, I remember when I wanted to go somewhere as a teenager or something, my stepmother even said, "I'm not your taxi driver." Well, if she's not my taxi driver, who's going to take me unless I had a car? I mean, it was just, I thought it was like cruel. I thought, you know, the parents who raised me, I just felt like I deserved so much better. And, you know, they weren't financially giving or helpful, and they were not emotionally supportive. So, on all counts, on all respects, they were losers. And I just feel that I deserve so much better than what they gave, what they had to offer. And I might not have been the strongest antinatalist if I had better parents, because that's kind of the origin of my connection to, you know, antinatalism and the philosophy. But nevertheless, I mean, there's been so much harm, you know, in life, and operations and whatnot, and there was just no consent to any of it. And I mean, I just have so much disgust for, it's okay. I just have so much disgust for my parents, and mom and dad equally. I mean, both of them were just entirely selfish and self-absorbed, and I mean, it just blew me away. Like, okay, come on. Like back in the day, you know, I mean, I would compare my parents to other people. And I had a friend who was, she was a black friend, and she had, her parents had, you know, limited means, but they did everything for her. Her name is Evelyn, and she was like the best friend. She was a shoulder to cry on. She had so much integrity. And I saw her at my 40th high school reunion, and she's still just a beloved individual. I mean, even her family, her mom is very old, and I met her mom again after decades of not seeing them, and she just had, I mean, her whole family was just full of, I really enjoyed being over her house when I was young, because my dad and my stepmom, they smoked a lot in the house, and it was very disturbing. It was very, very toxic, and it was clear that, you know, my stepmother did not care for me or my brother. She just couldn't wait for us to, you know, to move out and whatnot. And, but Evelyn's house was a refuge for me. And I would go over there when things got bad at my house, which was often. And her family just had such warmth. It just had everything that my family did not have. I mean, You know, my parents were just ill-equipped to have kids, raise kids. My mom, she took, you know, I mean, she was good about diapering a child and that sort of thing, dressing up a baby, feeding a baby, but she had no business having children. And she certainly didn't have business having a second child, which was my brother. But thank goodness I did have some really, really good friends along the way. And then, you know, after I grew up and left home, literally left and never looked back. That seemed to hurt them greatly, though. But it helped me. But, and then, you know, I began to meet other friends and boyfriends, and along the way, they actually supported me and boosted me because there was no support at home. And it was not for lack of money. It was just purely, my parents were toxic narcissists. Just malignant narcissists. So self-involved, only concerned about themselves and their own welfare, to the expense of their own children. I don't know. I don't know how somebody can like raise a child and have a child, biological child, and do so much destruction and create so much unhappiness at the home and the home life. And you know, my parents got divorced when I was about 13, and that just caused a huge split in the family. And they both got married pretty soon after, and my dad was the first to get remarried, and he had a child. And I think the boy, he was 17 years younger than me. I really never knew him, but I do think that he's child-free now. So that means all three of us are child-free. It really goes to show you something, doesn't it, about parents. Oh, and one thing that my dad said right after the birth of James, the last child, he said, you know, Diane, I didn't do it right with you and Scott. He said, I wasn't a very good father for you two. But now, since James has come along, I know exactly what to do. I know how to be a good father now. Well, if that wasn't another slap in the face. Just horrific things that, you know, have been said and done over the years. And, I mean, I really feel like I was kind of like on my own since the age of like 17. And I had a very, very great grandmother, though. Very, very helpful grandmother. And she made up for a lot of things. But, you know, not the pervasive feeling that, you know, I was just totally neglected and unloved when I was a kid. And actually, my brother feels the same way. And I'm sure if I were to speak to him now, he would probably agree entirely with antinatalism. In fact, he got a vasectomy around age 30. So he didn't want any part of raising a child, and he didn't like the way, you know, I guess girlfriends treated him, or the girlfriends. He didn't feel like the quality of girlfriend that he met was adequate. But anyway, yeah, every little thing, you know, just brings back memories. And today the Mazda RX-7 brought back a horrible memory. But you know, that's one of the problems with life. You don't forget certain things. You don't forget your childhood, and you don't forget the way you were treated, and you don't forget the lack of respect that people dished out. And you certainly don't forget the fact that your parents placed you into existence in a very, very harmful world. I mean, that's just not forgivable at all. So, anyway, that's my video. Put your thoughts down below. I'd like to hear some other, you know, replies from people who had really horrible and narcissistic parents who, didn't provide for their welfare. Because my two parents, they could have cared less. They didn't care about my future. They cared about their future. And they cared about their well-being, their cars, their houses, their hair, their person, their clothes. So, I just even recalled another horrifying situation. It was a prom night, and some weird things happened right on prom. A lot of weird things happened on prom night. But I had ordered a corsage. Would you believe my dad asked me for money to pick up the corsage? So yeah, I just felt like I deserved so much better. I mean, it would have been blissful if my dad had just, paid the $3 for the massage on the prom night. His only daughter's only prom night, her senior prom. So it really hurt me that people with far less income and resources were so much better to their children than mine, because we actually had ample resources. He had a great job, a great degree, a teacher, lots of time off, savings, land and a nice house and multiple cars. But it just was not spent on the children. One thing my dad did say, he said that he was given everything as a child. He was given everything from coming and going. And he said it made him a piece of shit. So he was destined to not do anything for his own two children, because he wanted them to do it on their own. Yep. Swell dad, huh? I call that cheap and selfish and narcissistic. I don't call that character building at all. I don't call that, taking care of your children. I call that abuse. I call it emotional and financial abuse. But, there's a million reasons to be an antinatalist. And that's one of mine. It's because of just gross parental neglect and emotional avoidance and invalidation. They just did not care, to validate us kids. And it's like they just kind of, threw their hands up in the air and like, hey, you're on your own. And just like an old towel, just threw us out and, just discarded us. But I have read so many books on narcissism, and they fit the utter core of it all. And, I really, really wish I had great parents, because the whole life after growing up is basically recovery from a bad childhood, a bad divorce, a very, very awkward public divorce. Like my parents were very active in the church, and so when the parents got divorced, it really kind of shook the whole system, and they were, they were well known. They were substantial people in the church network, and so there was a lot of finger pointing and that sort of thing. But I never blamed myself for the divorce, and it didn't have anything to do with us kids. It had to do with the relationship between my mom and dad. Probably an ongoing issues that just were not forgivable. Just, I'm sure there was like ongoing abuse in that respect too. Now I'm about to say something that's really, really disgusting and vulgar. My mom had to have a hysterectomy in her early 30s. And it was because of my dad infecting her with the HPV virus. And he was her only partner, but not so with him. He was in the service, and he used to brag about multiple, conquests, as many men would. But I guess he had an issue with his penis, his foreskin, and he had to get the foreskin removed. And I think it was because of some kind of, STD or something. But he infected my mom with an HPV virus, and she had to have hysterectomy. So she had cervical cancer. Now, I don't even know if back then women were told that the cancer came from, the man in their life, carrying the virus and being promiscuous in his youth or whatever. Or just, not being promiscuous, but just, sleeping with one person who, had the virus, and it was passed on to women. So women usually get the brunt of things, and they have the brunt of reproductivity. But she had the hysterectomy, and, it went fine and everything. And then afterwards, my dad said to her, he didn't feel the same having sex with her because he didn't have a uterus to hit. Now, if that's not narcissistic, I don't know what is. I cannot imagine the horror of a woman getting that surgery because of literally the man in her life spreading it to her, and then claims that he's not feeling enough. It's insane. It's just so vulgar and so selfish. I'm horrified even just repeating this on on this video, but at least you've watched it this far, and you're dedicated to my channel and whatnot. But yeah. So my dad had to get his foreskin cut off when he was about 18, and he says it was incredibly painful. I guess he had multiple infections or whatever, probably as a result of that, STD thing. But he told me that every time it got erect, it would like open up the wound from the, circumcision. And he says it was excruciating. So he actually wished he had been circumcised as a baby. But for some reason, he might have even been born at home. I think he was born, I don't know, like 1939 or something. And, back then he could have been born at home. But anyway, so that's a little bit of my story. And I have, a lot of memories, a lot of very vivid and clear memories, because I don't forget things. And certain things, like the things that my dad did to me, or like he would tickle me to the point of pain, and he literally got off on it. He was laughing. He mocked me. The fact that, I was uncomfortable. So I just have a lot of bad memories. I mean, he was good in some respects, and I do think he cared for me at some points. But the self-absorption from my parents was just too much, and it was just very crucial for my development. And everybody out there, they've got a story. I have been quite candid about my bad parents, even when I was a teenager, even like 14 or 15. People didn't want to hear it. They actually, I felt like I was crucified for even speaking bad about my parents. And that's because they didn't understand. They didn't have the same scenario. So, it's just like, and there's some children who are abused in family. There's a book called A Boy Called It, and his mother singled him out over the daughters, and was just awfully neglectful and abusive, cruel to him. But the other siblings, they didn't, they knew that he was being abused, but it didn't affect them, so they had altogether different experiences. People can have altogether different experiences in a family. And my brother feels about the same way I do, but not towards our mom. My mom was more forgiving and accepting of him. So, but being outspoken about parents and about abuses has not gotten me any favor. People don't want to hear about it. And parents themselves, they think they're good parents, you know. Everybody thinks, oh, I did the best I could, blah, blah, blah. So when I talk about my experience, people try to dismiss it or downplay it. And they say, well, nobody's perfect. Well, this is beyond being imperfect. I mean, this is called abuse. And things like withholding is abuse. Narcissistic personalities are very abusive. Addictions in the household are abusive. My dad was a chain smoker from the time I knew him. I mean, that's all he did was smoke. Always have a cigarette in his hand. So, for some reason, I didn't, get the addictive gene, which is good. It's good for me. I didn't inherit all the negatives. I inherited enough negatives, but not the addictive gene. So, thank God I'm not following in his footsteps. But, no, I'm not singing their praises at all. And I see things in people today. I see children who, I see their parents acting towards them the way mine did towards me. And I can just spot the abuse right away. I can just sense what's going on in the family structure. And I really think sincere, loving parents are few and far between, sadly. I know that if I'd had a kid, I would have done the best I could and treated them with kid gloves, just like I treat my dogs. And I've had multiple dogs. Not all the dogs are lovable. Some of them were nobody's favorite, really. But, I treated even those dogs with just great respect. And even on their dying day, some of the dogs that were the least loved dogs evoked the most sadness in me on their last day. And there was a dog I had. His name was Pluto. And, Pluto just had kind of a quirky behavior, but he didn't have any bad habits, really. He was, for all intents and purposes, a good dog. And, but in the household, poor dog, he was nobody's favorite. But on his last day, he was just practically crippled. He had Cushing's disease, and he was just declining. I guess he was like 12. And he was adopted. He was a mixed breed dog. But, I cried so hard at his euthanasia, and I'm not even sure why. I guess, I faked loving him, and he never felt, that he was unloved. He actually was treated well. He was walked. He was bathed. He was told he was loved. But, I was like the best parent, pet parent that he could have had. And, he had a great home from the time he was born till the time he died. And, I basically had to take him in, on his last day to the vet myself, because I was the only one that was home. I could barely struggle with, lifting him because he wasn't very mobile. But anyway, I really think that even with my own animal pack, I have tried so hard to give everybody attention and love, and give everybody little nicknames and little sentences that apply to them, and to make them feel really special. But growing up, I did not feel special. And we were just superfluous. We were just, expendable and disposable. So that's my spiel for today. So thanks you for watching this far, and please jot down your own stories and your own family dynamics. Please post it down below, because all of us, we have a story. And I do believe that abuse and neglect is more common than not. So thanks for watching, guys.